It is Monday, the 2nd of July. Still Monday, the 2nd of July. If you've seen a video of Manchester's Oxford Road, then that was this morning. It's now, after a very hot day, a lovely evening in the heart of the Peak District. Just headed through Buxton, and now we're dropping down to end the evening in Bakewell. And to get us there, we have a lovely Monsal Trail. Look at this. So I think it's Millersdale. We'll head through Millersdale, a few tunnels along the way to Monsal Trail, through this spectacular set of limestone gorges. And this route we're taking is originally the Midland Railway's main line to Manchester. So we have to thank for this the beaching acts, but also the fact that the great capitalist rush that led to the construction of the railways in the first place led to three great companies all competing for very similar markets, such that Euston and St Pancras and other stations all had their flagship routes to Manchester. During beaching, Euston won that one, St Pancras lost, and the result is that we have a nice ex-rail trail to ride on to Bakewell. Of course, it didn't happen instantly after the railway closed. In fact, this only opened 6 or 7 years ago. When I was last here, it was just a week or two away from opening, so I've missed all of this in the past. This is the first time I've got to enjoy the full route. Wow. That's quite nice, isn't it? Ooh. This is surely worth a picture. Not supposed to use the tunnel after dusk. I don't know if that's because it's got bats. I don't think I saw bats. I think I might have heard bats while taking some pictures there. What's next? You think? What is this? So, lime kilns, makes sense. Local limestone, now home to swifts and bats. Also presumably local limestone for the surfacing along here. Very traditional British rural cycle route surfacing. Crushed limestone. And perhaps we're in one of the few places where that's actually in keeping with the local materials. It is a pretty awful material to cycle on. It's cheap, it's permeable. I get why people use it. I don't get why some local authorities try to come up with excuses for why it is actually some kind of superior material, rather than they're just doing it to save the expense of building proper drainage and putting a proper surface on a path. Which is that they try to claim that it's less urbanising than putting down a proper asphalt surface. Except you'll be able to hear that it's hardly rural, peaceful at all. To have the sound of crushed limestone under your tyres or under your feet. Nice asphalt path, you'd be able to hear the birds. You can see that this was a pretty serious railway line at one time. A main express route for St Pancras to Manchester, as well as serving the local communities through here. Perhaps more importantly, the local industry in the valley. It is called Millersdale for a reason. So this is obviously lovely, and it shows off the National Cycle Network almost at its best. There are a few similar kinds of routes, picturesque rail trails in lovely rural bits of the country that don't have the floored surfaces, but otherwise this is pretty much as good as the National Cycle Network gets. And yet it is still so very flawed, not just in the surfacing but in the fact that to get here, because I wasn't driving, I didn't want to go down the main A6 road, park up in a car park at the top of the dale. To cycle to that end of it, if you don't just want to go up from Bakewell and straight back down to Bakewell, you have to go a long way round, up and over the hills, along bits of main roads, across busy trunk roads, and then over bridle paths and down these 1 in 3 slope, scree slope paths to get to the end of the nice bit of National Cycle Network. And so that was one of the big criticisms of it to begin with, was that despite the marketing that there was National Cycle Network within 4 miles, I think they said, or within a close distance of some large percentage of the population. I forget exactly what they were claiming, but it was basically, hey, you can access the National Cycle Network locally to you. But actually right from the beginning, this focus on putting in leisure network meant that it was for people to drive to, park up, get their bikes off of the car, and not solving any transport issue. That in itself, I mean, it's a minor thing in the scheme of things. I don't suppose we have to worry about a few people driving to a car park on the end of a national cycle route causing too many problems for the world. But it's the fact that we have focused effort and money and investment on a network that is doing that and not doing much else, not solving people's everyday transport needs. It's what you really need in a rural area like this. It's something that links together the villages to their nearest town. People in the villages can get to shops, get to places they work, get to schools, get to their GP surgery, whatever it might be. And that isn't what the National Cycle Network is doing. Look at this, we've got some more cliffs and gorges down here. Wow. And it looks like another path at the bottom of the valley. I don't know what that is. Stupid phone cradle is... It's got these arms on the side, right where my power button is. Keep accidentally rebooting. And you may just think that the National Cycle Network is a little bit of an irrelevance, and yeah, it is. But there is an aspect of politicians, in fact, I'm fairly sure, I should look up the reference, I'm fairly sure David Cameron himself opened a little section of National Cycle Network one time. I think they put a round number of miles on it, 12,000 or something like that, or maybe they got it up to 20,000. They seem to add anything and everything to the National Cycle Network. After all, it could be 20,000. And in doing so, he cited that as, we're doing really great in this country for cycling. Look how many thousands of miles of route we've got. That's it, job done. I don't suppose David Cameron, when he was Prime Minister, was really paying a great deal of interest in this kind of detail of transport policy, and I'm not going to blame him for that. I'm not going to blame him for not being very well briefed on the fact that we're not doing very well at delivering for cycling in this country. But of more concern is beneath that level, when ministers of state in charge of cycling policy do the same thing, and when local councillors do the same thing and think that a little bit of cosmetic investment along a national cycle network route somehow means they've done their bit for enabling cycling in their borough or district. I mean, Monsal Trail was very explicitly the investment from the local council into this. Was very much tourism based. Obviously, Peak District National Park, a big part of the local economy. Can't blame them for wanting to invest in tourism, and that's fine. Call the National Cycle Network what it is. A tourism facility, a tourist attraction. Just don't go around then claiming that there are 10, 12, 20,000, whatever the number is, miles of utility cycling network in the country. I guess those are the mills down by the river. I think this might be the tunnel that takes us between Millersdale and into Monsaldale. One of the tunnels does. And so Monsaldale is a little bit more pastoral than Millersdale. Oh no, we've still got more tunnels to come. And more gorgeous. You can see that this line was a pretty amazing bit of engineering, a lot of hard work. It's an amazing asset that we have, but it also highlights a couple of other issues with this National Cycle Network model for enabling cycling, which is, one, we don't have these everywhere, especially not between all of the A's and B's that people need to get between for their everyday journeys, and most of all when they are in the sort of places where people want to get from A to B, they're rather under threat of being turned back into railways now. So there are already sections of the National Cycle Network around Edinburgh, on the Borders Railway and on the Airdrie to Bathgate Railway that have already been built over with reinstated railways. Another issue to consider, of course, is that unless, like me today, you've had quite a lot of time to spare to get to your destination, you probably just don't trust National Cycle Network signs. So you could see a sign for a lovely trail like this, but you have no idea that it's this lovely trail that you're going to get. It could be more like what I got today, where you get sent up a pretty very steep scree slope. I'm not really sure I mean, I'm not a mountain biker, I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure the mountain bikers can deal with all that sort of stuff, but it does render it not even a touring and tourism network. It renders it at best a cross-country mountain bike network. But that, I'm sure, can be a whole video in itself. I understand that that message is getting through and reviews are going on about whether we really should still be signposting 10 or 12 or 20, however many thousand miles they say it is, of National Cycle Network, when actually signing ski slopes and bogs and rocky rivers and other totally impassable nonsense are always likely steps across that suburban station in Edinburgh that is signed as National Cycle Network, the beach at Burnham-on-Sea in Somerset. All of that totally devalues that brand to the point where nobody will follow the signs, and so they'll miss out on actually quite nice routes like this. But yes, that's a topic I'm sure we'll be returning to over time. Here we go, this is what we're looking for. We're in Monsaldale. Of course, when you're on the lovely viaduct, you can see the lovely sights that there are to see from the viaduct. But can you see how spectacular the viaduct is itself? Oh, hurry up now, I'm running late. They want me to check in at the accommodation. If anyone tells you I'm terrible at punctuality and timekeeping, don't believe a word they say.